Cancer, just the word itself can strike fear into our hearts. Most of us either know someone who has been impacted by cancer or we experienced it ourselves. Today's guest knows all about the pain, suffering, and challenges surrounding the disease. Glynis Belec joins me now from Drayton, Ontario. Glynis is author of the book Cancer, It's No Laughing Matter, but It Helps. Glynis, thanks for joining me today on BCN.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me and for being interested in my book.
You bet. Now, Glynis, this is a book about your personal journey and your battle with cancer. Why did you decide to write it?
Well, to tell you the truth, it took me 10 years to, as I say in the introduction of my book, to get the guts to write this book. Basically, though, I had the idea. I really feel that, I know it sounds a little cliche, but God woke me up one night after a particularly rough time of chemo. I think it was my second or third session, and I was having a tough time and feeling, all the side effects, and lost my hair and lost my dignity, lost everything. And I was just feeling rough. So anyway, it was just kind of like I was woken up in the middle of the night and given this thought that cancer is really serious stuff. But you know what? It's okay to laugh and find joy and have hope, and so this title kind of came to me, Cancer, No Laughing Matter, but It Helps. So I looked over at my husband to see if he was awake and hearing anything, but it was just something that I was kind of hearing in my heart, and I wrote it down. And so, but I had no desire to write a book about myself at that point. I was journaling, and I'm so glad I journaled and I kept those journals. I ended up writing a children's story called Mrs. B Has Cancer, because I was teaching at the time, and I was they had so many questions, and so it was just kind of in response to that. But as far as writing my own book, I wasn't ready for that yet. So it did take me 10 years to get around to it.
So how did you respond when the doctor first told you it was ovarian cancer?
Yeah, good question. Probably two words come to mind: flabbergasted and gobsmacked, to name a few. Last thing I thought would happen to me. I wasn't in any pain. That was a funny thing. It was just, looking back now, I had symptoms of ovarian cancer because they're very vague and they're very sort of middle of, a woman's midlife and kind of all those funny symptoms. But I had lost a lot of weight. I was caring for my mom, and I was kind of running back and forth and up and down stairs and what have you. And I felt something in my abdomen. And so that took me to the doctor. But I never took my husband to the doctor when I was going to figure out, what had happened, because I just thought it was, like I said, my uterus doing a flip flop or something. But so I was rather speechless, which is hard for me. But so I had to go back.
So did you go through the surgery and then maybe radiation and chemotherapy?
Yes, I didn't go through radiation, but I had emergency surgery like within a couple of weeks, and then through chemo. Yeah, that was tough. Life-changing stuff. Life-changing stuff. Does open your eyes, though.
How long have you been cancer-free?
10 years. Well, 10 years was my celebration to write the book. So 11 years now, because the book took me, between editing and everything else, it was a year coming out. But yeah, so yay.
Yes, thank God for
Celebrating.
that. Any advice
Thank
on how
you.
to deal with the fears that come up that you can maybe give to our viewers who are battling cancer?
It's really hard because everybody's situation is different, but probably, where there's life, there's hope. And it makes you, it's cliche again, but it does make you stronger, or you can wallow in self-pity and go the other way. But, always hope, never give up, fight the good fight and all those wonderful things, and pray, 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 pray. It's okay to wallow for a while, just don't stay there. And it's amazing what you can learn through your journey. And I was bound and determined that that was what I was going to do, and I did.
I had a cousin who had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he was telling me as he was going through his chemotherapy treatments, everything would taste metallic. And he lost his
Yes.
hair as well. Did any of that happen with you?
Yeah, not so much the metallic. My appetite was incredible because I was on steroids. And it's like, oh my goodness. So I ate a lot, and but the doctors liked that, even though I didn't, because I was gaining a bit of weight at the process. But yeah, everything is different. Like your body metabolism is out of whack. Sometimes you're sick, sometimes you're not, and there's really something, I don't know if you've heard of this, but chemo brain, that's a true thing that happens. And it means that, and it affects, again, people differently, but basically it's like things don't always, turn out the way you want them to be. Sometimes I would find something in the fridge. I thought, I don't remember putting there something that shouldn't have been in the fridge or whatever, but just silly, forgetful things, and and it's true. Your brain gets a little mangled, and yeah.
Now, you say we have two choices each morning. Glynis, what are they?
You can wallow in that self-pity, or you can put on your big girl stretchy pants and get going and say, okay, God, what's in it for me today? And I had to do that for a while. And it's okay to wallow for a while. You're allowed to do that. You've had this horrific diagnosis, and you don't know. And I didn't know at that point whether I was going to live or die, or whether everything was going to be successful. But it's attitude. We can't control much. And that was what I really found out, because I don't know if you can tell or not, but I have a bit of controlling personality. And I found out that I couldn't control much except my attitude. So I determined that I had to do that. And I had some wonderful friends, a girlfriend in Florida, actually. We went to school together, and she was my rock, and a lot of other people. And so, yeah.
Let's talk about that. How important is it to have that strong support system?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And but also a word of advice too, you have to be able to accept that too. And that was where I struggled a little bit. Sometimes I was like this naughty child having a temper tantrum inside, because like I can do it myself, but I really couldn't do it myself. People wanted to bring me meals or do my gardening or help me with this, that, and the other. And I didn't want to let them do it, but God convicted me one day, because I was kind of going through this, and I never said this out loud. It was just kind of to myself. But he said, Glynis, you know what? I'm going to tell you, I give people gifts of hospitality or compassion. And if you don't allow them to use them, you're denying me. And busted or what? It was really an eye-opening for me. It's not that I ever arrived and I'm now perfect at that, because I still struggle with that. But every time I think about that, it really makes me think twice that, yeah, God has given other people gifts to use for times like this. So had to suck it up.
I remember when my father was battling, he had a huge tumor in his esophagus. He couldn't swallow food anymore, and he starved to death when my father passed away. And I remember, as an only child, being there for my father, and he says, the most important thing you can do for me, son, is like to be a sounding board, so he can
Oh,
unburden himself and share, and just to be there to love and support him as much as I can, and to pray for him, obviously. What advice would you give to someone who has a relative going through that journey?
I think that's absolutely good advice, to be that sounding board, because a person who's dealing with cancer, their emotions are up and down. It's kind of like a helter skelter of emotions. And some days are fine, and I'm superwoman, I conquer the world. Other days you're like laying flat and you're crying your eyes out. And but yeah, it's really good to definitely pray, be there just to listen sometimes, a hand on the shoulder, yes, a meal or something that just shows that you care, that you're real, you're a person, and that you have needs, and you have all these emotions. And also, I'd like to also interject here too about the caregiver, because the caregiver is really important too. And I'm sure you know about that too, caring for your father. That is tough. And because you feel helpless, don't you? You want to fix it, you want to help, but really there's nothing you can do too. So I think it's important that people don't forget about that caregiver.
Our family also experienced a miracle. My father was diagnosed, and 2 weeks before he died, I remember on my birthday on June 11th, I was praying because he couldn't swallow food anymore. He was just drinking liquid morphine, water. And I said to him, let's take you out to a restaurant, Dad, for my birthday. He said, son, I can't eat any solid foods. I said, trust me. And I prayed to our Heavenly Father, please allow my dad's esophagus to open up. That day, Glynis, he had a steak,
Oh,
potatoes, salad. He had tears rolling down his cheeks. I don't know how this is possible. How is this possible? And I said, I know how it's possible, Dad. And then he died
that's
2
it.
weeks later.
That's amazing. We're serving an amazing God.
Isn't it something? It was a miracle that day on my birthday. Now, in the title of your book, you talk about laughter being a big help. How is that so?
And when I did that, I didn't want it to be disrespectful. And this is not a book filled with humor and laughter and making light of cancer. What it is, it's how I coped, and just different things. Because you have to have a sense of humor. You have to, because there's just plain things that you have to laugh at. For instance, let me think of one now. When I was going for my bone scan, the clinician or the technician told me not to move, and I must have, because he said I had two heads. So then we did, the two heads are better than one.
Yeah.
And then he said he saw a shadow, and I said, maybe it's my brain. He says, nope, there's no brain there at all. So we kind of laugh at we had to have to laugh at those small things. And when people come It's you don't have to be serious all the time. Yes, you do want to talk a little bit about your cancer and your situation, but tell me funny things. Tell me about your children, and I'll tell you about my children or grandchildren or whatever. And it's good. It kind of helps you through those tough times.
You're right that God can actually turn evil into something good. What kind of good things could possibly come out of a battle with cancer?
Right. I know it's really hard. I will never say I'm glad I had cancer, but I'm grateful because man, oh man, he brought a lot of people into my path that would never have been there before. And my favorite scripture verse was and is Psalm 46, verse 10, be still and know that I am God. And I always loved that. And I had it on my business cards. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, yes, great verse. I didn't know what that meant until I was hit by this 2x4 of cancer and realized what being still meant, and just the good things that he brought into my life and made me slow down and appreciate things and know that I am not in control and he's got this no matter what. If I was going to die, no, I didn't want to die, but he had it if it was. In my book, I also have stories in the last two chapters, I should say, from other people, friends and acquaintances to tell their stories too, because I really wanted to share them. And my last chapter is actually dedicated to a writer friend of mine who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and she ended up dying before the book was published. But she wanted me to tell her story because she wanted to write it, but of course she couldn't. So I did a little bit. I honored her as much as I could. But I tell you, that phone call, that hour-long phone call to New Brunswick where she lived, eye-opening. She was ministering to me. Here I was, I was fine. She was dying from cancer and she was giving me all these beautiful stories. And she told me, and I actually just wrote something about this today, watching for the small miracles. Because we take so much for granted, don't we? And our day, even every breath we take, or just the different things that our hydro, our technology, all these things, and she said, look out for the small miracles. And I tried to do that. Thought that was really good advice.
And count your blessings each and every day. Appreciate the smell of a rose, the hug of your child, a beautiful sunrise or a sunset, the taste of food, just all of that. But does cancer often also help you to think about eternity?
Yes, it does. It does. I thought a lot about death, and I find myself watching videos too, and thinking and about it. But I wasn't. It was funny. I wasn't. I was. I didn't want to die. I mean, I was just turning 52, and my daughter was just had her baby. I got to be with her 2 days before my surgery, and I was in the delivery room, and I didn't want to die, but I was also getting to the point. I kind of crossed over at one point where, okay, if I'm going to die, that's your will, Lord. I remember when I was going in for chemo different times, I would see these young mums or these young fellows that come in, and they had children, small children, and here I am, a grandma. No, I didn't want to die, but I had lived a life, a good life, and I had lots to be grateful for. But I just sometimes don't understand. One day I will. When we cross over, I'm sure we'll have all the answers, but not right now. We just pray and give thanks, and like you said, count blessings.
Yeah, God is not finished with either of us yet here. So what is the takeaway you want readers to remember from your book, Glynis?
Probably the biggest takeaway is hope. N- To, in the back of my book, I've got a whole list of things what I learned through cancer, and I think the thread of them is hope. God is perfectly in control, I say here. I learned that God is perfectly in control. And when I doubt that for even a moment, he sends an angel to remind me. And those angels come in different forms, whether it be people, whether it be a blessing that comes through nature or whatever. But yeah, so yes, the takeaway, I would like people to always hope.
Hope is great. We need hope,
Never
definitely.
give up.
Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love.
This is love. Amen. I wrote that today too.
Glynis Belec, author of Cancer, It's No Laughing Matter, But It Helps. Thanks so much for joining me today from Drayton, Ontario.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Hal. Nice talking to you.
You as well. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.